It's great to play golf outside. That's our favorite place to play it, but sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate and you got to play inside. Luckily, there's golf simulators popping up all around the country and the world, and it's a great way to practice. We have a great studio here, but the thing is, a lot of people have no idea what numbers to look at. When I started practicing on TrackMan by myself, I didn't have a clue what was important, and you've taught me a lot, but today we wanted to go through Ed's most important data points that he's looking at with his students, and this is all stuff that you can do either at home or a local golf simulator place.
Absolutely. We're going to use TrackMan numbers today, but you know, if you're on a Mevo Plus or a Foresight,
Rapsodo.
yep, and you know, most of them track the same things. Some might call it right path, some might call it left. TrackMan just calls it club path, and it's a plus or a minus. And so we'll discuss all that and how best to use it.
Yep.
When I bring up all the possible numbers that TrackMan traces, it's all of these tiles. They're called tiles in TrackMan. There's club data, there's launch data, and there's ball flight data. And you can go crazy trying to analyze everything at once. So of all those tiles that are available, when I'm working with somebody, I eliminate all but these 5 tiles. And this is usually what I'm going to show. And that's if I'm working on a golf swing or working on my golf swing. If I'm just solely practicing, oftentimes the only number I'll put up there is carry distance. And I'll just hit shots with every club in my bag, tracking those carry yardages. And that's very important for you to understand. If you don't do anything on a launch monitor, but twice a year, check every club in your bag and go through your carry distances, it'll really help you with course management. There's 2 distances that TrackMan will track, either carry distance or total distance. The total you have to be careful with because TrackMan is imagining how far it would bounce after it lands. And obviously that depends on the conditions on the golf course. And so a good player only worries about carry distance, and that is where the ball lands. From where you hit it to where it touches down is the carry distance. If the greens are firm, I might carry everything 15 yards short of the flag. But if it's soft, I might carry it right to the flag. And as a player, I have to understand what my carry distances are. And that's one of the greatest things with launch monitors is that we can track that. And most people's carry distance is far less than what they think they actually hit their clubs. Most people that their 150 club is a 7-iron, you're probably going to find out your carry distance is 135 or 140 is all. And so if you have a front pin that's 140 and there's a creek right in front of the green, you better not hit 7-iron if you're thinking that you can carry that distance, because you probably can't. So carry distances are really important to do. One thing that I love, why I have a TrackMan, is because it also measures angle of attack. And that's the direction that the center of the club head is moving at impact. Is it moving down or is it moving up? If it's moving down and it's a negative angle of attack, it would show on the monitor. That means the low point of our swing is in front of the ball towards the target. That's really important with chipping. The best chippers and pitchers would probably have a -10 angle of attack. And it's also really important with the short irons, 7-iron through sand wedge, where almost all good players would have a negative angle of attack. Lots of players with driver have a positive angle of attack, which means that the club head is traveling on the way up at impact. We usually have to have the ball teed pretty high to have room behind the ball to go under the ball. And that's why having a positive angle of attack's a nightmare with your short clubs. So Angle of attack is really important. I've seen players with a very steep angle of attack that take no divot, and I've seen players with a positive angle of attack that takes deep divots. And so your divots really don't tell you correctly what angle of attack is. So that's one of the great things from an instruction point of view we've learned with TrackMan is angle of attack. So the 5 tiles that I would use is angle of attack, carry distance like we've already talked about, and then I want to know what the path of the club is, and I want to know the face angle of the club, and then I want to know the combination of those two, which is called face to path. And that is all I usually show any of my students, because I don't want them to get confused or distracted by looking at club head speeds, smash factors, all those other things that this will show you. I want them to strictly know the club data and the carry distances. And if I can get them to focus on those areas, that's how I'm going to improve their golf game. So angle of attack has to do with where the handle of the club, the top end of the grip, is in relation to the leading edge of the club. The more I have the shaft lean forward at impact, the more the club head after impact is going to swing down in front of the ball. The more that handle's behind, the more this club head, this leading edge, is going to swing on the upswing. So really, angle of attack is really a measurement of shaft lean at impact. And it's not that we're hitting down on the ball or up on the ball. It has much more to do with the angle of attack. And if you understand that as a player, it'll really, really help you. So if I'm trying to create a negative angle of attack, I'm going to feel like I have forward shaft lean at impact. And I just hit a half a shot and demonstrate that. And you'll see on the monitor that that'll be an angle of attack of -7. That's my pitching wedge, so that's a very good angle of attack, probably what most tour players would have, maybe -8 or 9, some of them would have as well. You can see it got a lot of other numbers too. My club path was pretty close to 0, only -0.2. And then my face would have been open 4 degrees to that path. And so I should have hit a slight fade with just a short shot. And my carry distance of 48 yards. Now if I have the handle farther behind the ball at impact, you'll see that that'll change my angle of attack. So I really tried to exaggerate that. It, of course, didn't measure it. TGL has the same issues. There we go. So if my angle of attack is a positive number, that means that I'm bottoming out behind the ball. With an attack angle of 3, +3, I would mean the low point of my swing is probably 3 inches behind the ball. And that means my handle is backwards, 3 inches behind the leading edge at impact. If I was -3 with an attack angle, my handle would be in front. Attack angle and low point tells you a great deal about how good a ball striker you're going to become. When we talk about club path, I've told in many videos before, you really only make 2 mistakes in golf. You either make a path mistake or a face mistake or both. And so for most players, it helps me to identify what their issue is by getting on TrackMan and seeing, are they making a path mistake or a face mistake or both? And so depending on which mistake they're making, is what I'm going to work on first. And that's what you should work on at home first. So whenever the shaft gets too steep on the way down, it makes the club head swing to the left for a right-handed player. And if the shaft was too flat on the way down, it would make the club swing to the right too much for a right-handed player. And so basically this club path is going to be dictated by the shaft angle that you have on the way down. If it's correct, it'll be somewhere in there. Too steep, it'd be here. Too flat, it'd be here. And it's going to dictate what that path is. So I'm going to demonstrate a path that's too much to the left. And so you'll see that that's minus 12, a pretty typical number that I see with high handicap players. Now you can see that my face angle on that shot was pretty close to matching the path, so that means my ball's going to start left and go left. Typically what I see though with higher handicap players is this swing, a path that's way to the left but then the face is 0. And so they hit a shot that looks like that. And that'll be a minus 11 path. It'll be a plus 2 face angle. So my face to path is 14 degrees to the right. And because this is a lofted club, it doesn't slice a lot. But you can see my attack angle was 0, which is lousy. And my carry distance is only 67 yards. And my carry distance on the one before that went left was 92 yards. And so you can see how dramatic that is in terms of loss of distance. So this is probably the average 15 to 20 handicapper that I see and that I've seen for 30 years. This would be a typical shot pattern. It's something that you might see as well when you're practicing. So what would I do to somebody that is having that issue? Well, I would have them do several drills. One of my favorites is whenever this shaft's too steep, this club's going to work that direction. So I like them to swing with just their trail arm and feel an underhand throwing motion, and you can see where that club's going to swing from. Usually swinging one-armed, most players don't go this way. They're not really strong enough to do it. And so one-arm swinging is very, very good way to do it. In some of my other drills, I've put an alignment stick here and angled it on the ground if we're outside, and we can swing underneath that. Sometimes just as simple as having an alignment stick, and instead of pointing it straight at my target line, I can angle it more to the right. And then as a player, I can feel that my club head is swinging that direction on the way down. And you'll see with just a nice, easy swing, that should change my club path. And I'll be plus 2 instead of minus 14. So a pretty good, effective way to do it. So what we're trying to do is you rarely see a competitive player that is more than plus 3 on club path or minus 3. So they're in that range. So there's no perfect numbers on TrackMan or a launch monitor, but I want to see club path between plus 3 and minus 3. And I want to see it consistent. If you're minus 3, a little outside in, but you're outside in every time, you're just going to hit nice, easy little fades every time, it'll be easy to play. If you're plus 3 every time, you're going to hit nice little push draws every time. So this number of club path will tell you what your ball flight should be. Anytime club path is minus for a right-handed player, you're going to hit fades primarily. Anytime it's a plus number, you're probably going to hit draws or hooks. And so club path tells you your ball flight and the personality of what you should be playing. So if you're somebody that's trying to hit a draw, that's what you prefer to hit, and your club path is minus, you're never going to accomplish it, because only if you do accomplish it, it's going to be pull hooks to the left. And so that's no good. And so if you're wanting to hit draws, you have to have a club path that is positive on TrackMan for a right-hander. It's opposite for a left-hander. You would have a minus club path for a left-hander to hit draws. And so understand that explicitly, that is really what's going to dictate what your ball flight is. And until you correct that path, you don't have a chance at correcting your ball flight. And so once I get a path that's consistent, either plus a couple degrees or a minus couple of degrees, then we try to learn to match the face up with that. And so these are the TrackMan numbers. If you're on a different launch monitor, they might say in to out, or out to in, or they might say right, or they might say left. And so you'll just have to figure out which launch monitor you're using and what data you're getting. But again, if we want that club path to be within that cone of +3 to -3. And we'd like it to be the same every time. So most tour players that you see, they're either -2 or 3 every swing they take, or they're +2 or 3 every swing they take. And they either hit fades or draws depending on that club path. So understand that. Frankly, for a pretty good player, single-digit handicap, if you can get the path consistently correct, most players can figure out the face with just hitting balls to figure out the ball flight that they want. And so it's a common question that instructors are asked: do you work on face or do you work on club path first? The answer is it depends on the player. But if I have dramatic path issues, +12 or -12 on TrackMan, I'm probably going to fix the path first, and then see what happens with the face when I fix it. Because a lot of times paths that are too steep and across, it prevents you from releasing the club head correctly to get it back to square anyway. And as the path improves and swings much more correctly, well, the way my arms and hands work promotes an earlier release, and I might see a club face correction because I fixed the path. Sometimes, though, that's not the case. Sometimes if I have severe club face problems, a lot of times I have to fix the club face first. And so that's a decision I have to make as an instructor. But for you as a player, I would probably, if you see a -10 or 12 on your path, or a +10 or 12 on your path, double digits, I would fix that first. And so I think you'll have a lot more success. So, so club path and club face are the only two mistakes we can make. And so oftentimes the face angle is a function of how a player holding the club. So it's usually a grip mistake. They're either too much in the palms of their hands and they have an open club face, or they literally have too weak a grip a lot of times with their top hand. This is a very common mistake that I see, is with the top hand that's way over the top. That means their hands rotate on the takeaway and the club gets very open on the backswing. And usually open club faces cause paths to the left, because if you're really open, you have to swing left to correct for your slice. But it's a never-ending cycle. So if you'll concentrate on face and path and attack angle, it'll really, really improve you as you're working indoors. The last tile at the bottom is probably the most important, especially if you're trying to hit straight shots. And that's face to path. So that's a combination of club path and face. So it's face to path. And so because that's a 4.9 minus 2.2, we're going to have a face to path on this last shot of a positive 2.7. That means 2.7 degrees to the right. So that's going to be a fade. Oftentimes that ends up getting a double negative to where if the face is minus and then another minus, we can really get big numbers on this face to path. Yep. And so I'll kind of show you a pretty good swing, and you can see the difference. But the closer we get to 0 on face to path, the straighter your shots are going to be. And for players that are trying to hit a draw every time, they would like to be a right-hander, would like to be -1 on face to path. And for players that are trying to hit a fade every time, they would like it to be +1. So if I just make a nice smooth little swing here, you should see that my club path will be -4 on that, and my face angle was -0.3. So that's going to give me a face to path of 3.5, which will hit just that little gentle fade left to right. If I have a more correct path to the right, so if I get a club path that's to the right, 1 degree, but my face angle is 3 degrees or 2.8 degrees to the left, my face to path gets compounded to -4. And that's going to hit a pretty good draw or a pretty good hook, depending on how hard I hit it. And so understand the relationship between club path and face angle, and you'll understand this face to path, and it's probably the most important number to work on your golf swing with on launch monitors. So pretty typical swing of mine, -3 on an attack angle, pretty close to 0 on club path. My face angle just slightly closed a degree. So that's pretty well my typical shot, is just a little draw, and that's what I've always tried to hit. And so that's face to path, a -2, -1 is a perfect little draw for most players, and that's a pretty good number if you're trying to hit draws to look at.